Thank you, Angela, and thank you so much, everybody, for joining me here today. I'm very, very honoured and excited to be able to be presenting on this subject, which is very close to my heart, of breaking through the confidence barrier and moving our way to action. So, does your heart hold a secret desire, something you yearn for, you yearn to feel, to create, to share? Something that when you think of it, it lights you up or fills you with excitement and awe. What's stopping you from taking the next step towards bringing it into being? Do you find reasons why it can't happen, why you're not ready, why it's not going to work? Do you overthink yourself into a standstill, or perhaps you're someone who gets bogged down and overwhelmed by low self-belief? Do you tell yourself that in order to free yourself from that stuckness and to start yourself moving forward, you must first find that magic ingredient, confidence? Well, in this session, I want to unpick the confidence myth that so often holds us back from realizing our heartfelt desires. So I'm Ruth Polden, and movement directly impacts how we think and feel about ourselves. And I've been exploring this professionally for over 30 years. I'm a certified Feldenkrais practitioner, a yoga teacher and trainer, a yoga birth senior tutor, and a former dancer and choreographer. As a professional dancer, I was all about honing my instrument, my body, and to deliver what was ever asked of me and of it. And I truly believe that in the pursuit of building skill and achieving perfection, there was no gain without pain, and that to achieve my goal, I had to push harder and do more, no matter at what cost. Now, performing really was my passion, and it was a truly extraordinary time. But on the stage of my personal and my inner life, the cost was dear. Injury, low self-esteem, never feeling good enough, and the constant need to be validated by others to feel worthy was, me down to a T. And the very first time I experienced a Feldenkrais awareness through movement lesson, it was about 45 years ago, and it really was not love at first try, because at the time I was so invested in my belief of how we learn and how we get better at moving that I was having none of it. Thankfully, after a chain of injuries and a lot of struggle, I discovered its richness and its relevance to me as a person and also a performer. And my interest in nourishing my inner world took me towards yoga, and Scaravelli-inspired yoga in particular, which is a very gentle, respectful approach with curiosity and exploration at its core. So it meshes so well with the Feldenkrais principles. And after the birth of my first child, I trained as an active birth teacher, and I am a yoga birth teacher, and I'm also co-director of the Yoga Birth Teacher Training. And I've been accompanying people on their pregnancy, birth, and parenting journey for many, many years, and it is one of my passions. And taking the metaphor of birth and the metaphor of bringing life into the world, we are all on a journey of becoming more of ourselves, and a journey of bringing more of ourselves into being, into the world, and through doing, getting to know our true self in the process. So I really do believe that as we come home to ourselves with kindness and with curiosity, change is always possible. So how often do you doubt yourself and believe that you don't know enough, that you aren't ready, that you don't have what it takes? How many times a day do these sorts of stories and conversations play out in your head between you and yourself? I mean, it's amazing the sort of things we tell ourselves that we wouldn't dream of saying to our worst enemy. And recently, in the leadership community that I'm part of, we were asked to share one story we tell ourselves that keeps us feeling stuck. And it was really this, and also my years of meeting this with clients and students, and of course in myself, that inspired me to give this presentation today. Because we are afraid. We're afraid of messing up, of what others may say, what people may think, of failing, of showing ourselves up. And there's just more and more and more that, you know, we've all got our own stories. So what is this elusive confidence that so many of us are in search of? The Latin root word fid means trust. And we are sold this idea that it's confidence that is the cornerstone and foundation to all and to everything. And that once we have it in place, we'll be ready for whatever life throws our way. But it's not luck or your parents' genes that makes you a confident person. In fact, it's entirely the result of the thoughts that we have about ourselves and the subsequent actions we take. So it really has nothing to do with my actual ability and my ability to succeed at something, but rather my belief in my ability and my ability to do something. And thankfully, we are adaptive and dynamic, and changeable beings, and our nervous system is a dynamic living system that is molded and shaped by our experiences, and that this is really lifelong. Our brain forms new neural connections throughout life. And did you know that your brain can change its own structure and how it functions through thought and through activity, and of course through movement? Norman Deutsch, in his fantastic book, The Brain That Changes Itself, says, our brain survives in a changing world by changing itself. So, according to neuropsychologist Rick Hanson, our brain learns from our experiences, and the felt experience of movement and moving directly impacts and changes how we think and feel. And Feldenkrais method really offers space to explore and to discover new ways to move and function in a way that feels good. And how good is it to learn something new and to have a true feeling of accomplishment? The realization that you have other options, you have new possibilities that you didn't have before. It's a real buzz, and makes you feel good about yourself. And it's, I think of it as a constant dose of vitamin C, but not the C word confidence, but rather the C word circulation. And circulation is movement. And when you feel positive, resourceful, and empowered, it brings with it the desire to move more, to act, create. You become energized around an idea or a passion. And it brings with it a flow, more of a flow of ideas and desires to create. It's a bit like perpetual motion. And it's tender and precious, and it needs nurturing. So today, I want to share with you 3 simple and easy ways to respectfully and compassionately unstick yourself from the stories that hold you back. 3 movement strategies that stop the negative chatter and that can support you to move differently, to feel better, and to change the stuck record playing out in your mind that keeps you from taking the next step towards what you desire most in your life. As Moshe Feldenkrais said, the only permanent thing about our behavior patterns is our belief that they are so. So the first thing is slowing down. Life moves at a pace, and we become adept at being busy. And most of us have been socialized into seeing busyness as an accolade. Through our busyness, we often feel more productive, more important, more valued. And also in our busyness, we can often feel that we aren't managing to get enough done as we're constantly rushing around. So a busy mind ignites a busy body and vice versa. And over time, the buildup of busyness becomes overload, overwhelm, and unfortunately for so many, burnout. Through our busyness and our horrid lives, we're also able to avoid a lot. I'm just too busy to take that on right now. Feldenkrais practitioners are always going on about moving slowly in lessons, slowing down, doing less, and that's just so easy to say and really not easy to do when we're programmed and incentivized to be rushing and aspiring to hard work and putting in lots of effort. So how on earth do you inhabit a slow space, and what's the point anyway? So it's not about getting better at moving slowly, or even that we ought to necessarily go through life moving slowly, although simply having that option can be pretty useful in certain circumstances. Feldenkrais method is about learning, and it's about learning about learning, and it's about how we each learn to learn and to learn to know more about ourselves. So it's a lot of learning to learn new skills and to overcome limitations. The first thing is to slow down. Slow gets us to feel ourselves, to notice and sense ourselves differently, and slow gets our brain's attention. And movement with attention is when the brain actually starts to build new connections. So slow enriches our experience, and we notice more. We notice more about how we feel, how we move, we notice differences, and we move with more of ourselves involved. So we get interested in the present, we move in a way that we enjoy, and we become curious, and the judgment of our inner critic and our critical mind quietens down. So when you find yourself feeling overwhelmed, confused, how can you slow down? And when you give yourself permission to turn the speed dial down and take things slowly, notice what changes in you. You might notice your breathing changes, or something softens, what lands differently. And maybe your view of your situation might change. Feldenkrais trainer Elizabeth Beringer said something once that really, really inspired me. It was go slowly and get a lot out of a little. So the next strategy is to go small. And we often invite people to keep movement very small in a Feldenkrais lesson. And sometimes the movement may be barely visible, and it's even possible to do it in your imagination. The size of movement is less important. The ease and the quality is the key. And there's another curious idea, actually, that in a society where we embrace being bigger, being more than, being more visible, we can internalize a belief that more is more. And in some movement modalities, we're being asked to, stretch to our limit, to hold shapes, to hold positions, to go for a burn, to take things to your limit and your end range. But here we're interested in small steps, in not going as far as you can, not taking movement to the end range, and going just where it's easy, letting ease be your guide, where you can move with comfort and fluency. The quest is to minimize effort, to lose pushing, to lose straining, to lose stretching as far as you can. Because reducing force and effort, through that, you start to become more aware of yourself. You increase your sensibility, and it helps you notice yourself and what you're doing without realizing. So refinement ease, fluency, more of our body gets involved, and we spread the movement through our whole self. We become more subtle, more mobile, clearer, more at ease. And it really, really feels good. And in turn, we not only enjoy the movement, but we start to enjoy our moving self and to feel more positive about who we are. And crucially, we learn to be kind to our movement. And when you're kind to your movement, you're kind to yourself, because you are your movement. So we can discover that we can move in directions that we previously hadn't thought possible, or that were unknown to us. And we can take the next steps, and through taking tiny, easy steps, you can go further with less resistance. So movement with attention, when the brain starts to change and form new connections, improves not only the way we move, but we move more, we move smarter, because and often people will say that they feel that they're moving in ways they hadn't since they were a child. And another interesting element is that in a lesson, we pause and we rest frequently. Now, I know I personally struggled with this. I just couldn't understand why we were resting so soon when we'd hardly done anything. But pausing is another way into noticing and sensing ourselves, to get curious about what feels different and interested about what's changed. And it helps quieten that self-judging voice. And did you know that the brain is even more actively processing during pause? So the pausing space is really a rich time full of discovery and possibility. And through noticing difference, by getting curious about what is different, what's changed, it's what the brain loves. So Feldenkrais really celebrates difference. So please be different, be you, and be more differently you. So can you pause and discover the power of rest, the power of pause as you move in your day-to-day? A time maybe when you could refresh your attention or replenish your energy levels, create opportunity for change in pace and rhythm, and bring in something different, a different part of your day. And I wonder, what's your reflection on that? Because in a society where we value productivity, self-worth gets tied into results and deliverables. So are we wasting time when we pause and rest? Or maybe we're resting our awareness and growing our potential and I'm coming back to myself, and I'm discovering more of me. So the last strategy is an interesting one. At some point in our lives, most of us have had an experience where we have got something wrong or failed at something. And for many of us, it sticks at a very deep level because how it was received, how we might have been made to feel at the time. And it's not surprising that when we get caught up in the loop, that the outcome is most important, and that things boil down to getting things right or getting things wrong, success or failure, that we really begin to struggle with not doing things well. And when we equate learning with succeeding or learning with avoiding failure, research is showing that it really does impact us deeply. So I was, in researching this presentation, I came across a lot of studies that are really pointing to how our mental health is really really being impacted by anxiety, the anxiety around success and failure amongst students. This is in higher education in England. And, this was in 2016, but 77% of all students reported that they had a fear of failure. So I wonder if you've ever been told, actually, in any learning situation, not to try your best. And as Feldenkrais practitioners, we can get pretty brazen about bringing that into our classes. Brazen about noticing the place in us that we all have that really strives to get it right, to do it well, to get the movement right. But actually, even though the vehicle is movement and moving, we use a strategy of being less attached to achieving a perfect movement. It's not what we manage to do, it's the how. The ease, the quality, the fluency, and the gradual spreading of awareness and attention to what we notice and discover. So how do we ultimately do anything well or proficiently? The reality is that we ultimately learn to do it well by not doing it well to begin with, and through growing a body of experience and knowledge and growing possibility through exploration. So it really is so key to release the downward spiral of shame. The freedom to do something badly, to not do it well, to be scrappy, to free ourselves from that pursuit of perfection that really binds us. So if failing well was a superpower, what would you do now that you have been putting off or frightened of taking the next step? I love this quote: you need space for creativity and the space and freedom to fail. So in the quest for discovery, failing is just as important as getting it right. Finding out what doesn't work is part of the process of finding out what does. So how can we become best buddies with our flaws, with our imperfections, and show up as we are in all our humanity and all of our humanness? So this image is showing a piece of kintsugi art, which is a Japanese art form of putting broken pottery pieces back together with gold or sometimes silver or platinum. And it's built on the philosophy that embracing flaws and imperfections, you can create an even stronger, more beautiful piece of art. So, how can we be scrappy and celebrate our scrappy, disconnected pieces with rough edges? And how can we be gently and tenderly reconnected with care and attention? And through that, something even more beautiful, even more stable and strong is created. So how do we see ourselves not as broken, but full of potential and with choice? So is confidence the destination, the jewel in the crown to strive for and achieve? How would it be if confidence was a byproduct? We all want to feel comfortable, vital, and feel better in ourselves and in who we are. And movement with awareness directly opens the door into our feeling and our thinking world. And when we move with more ease, more delight, and freedom, we feel more joined up, more of our whole self, more complete. And we discover and experience ourselves very differently. So by slowing down, going small, allow new conversations to unfold and find a juicy, delicious richness in moving and untap hidden possibilities, not through end gaining or getting it right, but through learning and discovery. When you allow ease to be your guide, it's not to be lazy, but to be reminded of a gentleness, a kindness, and a gentle respect for yourself. And from there, you're present, more responsive, more attentive. You can meet resistance with compassion and curiosity, maybe even a playful, inquiring mind. You step more fully into yourself, your you-ness. And from there, you take the next step. So I just want to end, with this quote that from Moshe Feldenkrais. The present is the time in which we live, and what we do with our present self is the most important thing. For the past is carried into the future through our present selves. What we do now is the most important factor for tomorrow. The past is history. The future is only a guess, and this present moment makes them both what they are. Thank you very much.